Actually, it's the lead play in our offense.
From a tackle, take the defensive end if he's over him. If he's not, you drive down the first man to his inside. Pull back and get him. Take the first man outside the offensive tackle. No one shows. Go right by them and field inside. If the YN has the linebacker taken out, he cuts inside. If the YN has the linebacker in, he comes all the way around. If you look at this play, what we're trying to get is a seal here and a seal here, and try to run this play in the alley.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on Packernet.com. You can find me on Twitter at Packers_access. I'm joined tonight with the great Paul Bretl from Packers Wire, from Dairyland Express. Got one of the most underrated YouTube channels I've ever seen in my whole existence here. So you guys need to go sub his channel as soon as possible. You would not be sorry. But Paul, how you doing tonight, bub?
Hey, I'm excellent. Coming off a Packers victory. Happy to be in season and happy to be back talking football with you, Clayton.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny. We were going into that Bears game, and we were both. I think it's safe to say we were a little hesitant. Like, we have to see. And of course, as soon as we get to the fourth quarter, like just like we said last week, of course, this is how it would play out. Right?
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, there's just so much unknown around it. But like as the game's unfolding, as you're seeing it take place, you're like, oh yeah, this makes sense. Packers are the better team, as the saying goes. If you can control the trenches, you can probably control the game, and that was 100% what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, turnover differential. You heard Matt LaFleur say the goal was +2. They finished +2. Everything just fell into place. Just want to give a shout out to everybody in the chat. We got Zane in the house. We got Knucklehead Paul, Emilio, Mano, Eric Sutherland, HD, Stephen Smith, Brandy Lewis, and like I said, Knucklehead Paul in here, and J-Ro Rosta. I think that's a new one there. Welcome to the stream, guys. Let's just jump right into it, Paul. We kind of talked a little bit offline and had a few questions for you. You know, this is my opportunity to add a little bit of credibility to this joke of a show that we've got where we get on here and just get out of control way too quick. But definitely wanted to get your take on a few things. And let's kind of start right off the top with the injury report, if that's all right with you. Mm-hmm. You know, what's the latest in terms of the injuries for the Packers, and maybe more specifically, how good are you feeling about Aaron Jones, Quay Walker, and Christian Watson potentially playing this week? Kind of just want to test your pulse on the injury report because it seems a little vague, and I know we got some updates today, but how is Paul Bretl feeling about those three players in the injury report altogether?
Yeah, trying to get information out of Matt LaFleur and the rest of the coaching staff, as I'm sure is the case around the league, it's always going to be a little bit vague. Aaron Jones was out again, and it's really tough again from just trying to decipher what's taking place from the outside in, because as Jones said after the game, if it was a close one, he could have went back in on Sunday. So is this just the Packers being cautious again with a hamstring injury, which we know can linger, and if not taken care of properly is something that can turn into, maybe missing a game or two. All of a sudden you're talking 3, 4, 5 games. Is that the case? That's of what's happening, or is it more serious than what we were led to believe? And, I'm really up in the air on that one. I think if it's anything even close to 50-50 on Sunday, or even if there's any sort of lingering questions, I think that they're going to rest him. I think that's the way that they're going to go. We know that going back the last few seasons, they're very, very conscious of Aaron Jones' snap count. And prior to week 1, when Matt LaFleur was talking about Rashawn Gary's availability, talking about Christian Watson's availability, he referenced that this is a marathon. This isn't a sprint, to give us a little peek into there. And I don't think that's a surprising response, but it gives us a little bit of insight into how they're going to approach this. So I think if there's any sort of question marks that they have, they're going to sit Jones, and knowing that, hey, we'll manage getting through, one game without him. We just want to make sure that we have him for the long haul. I think that's the approach that they're going to have. And just to take a little side tangent from there, they played a heck of a game all around on Sunday. We all know that. But if there's an area that they got to improve upon, it's in the run game. There really, from a blocking standpoint, wasn't a whole lot that was there for Aaron Jones or A.J. Dillon. I know at the end of the game, Aaron Jones' raw numbers were solid. I think he averaged like 4.6 yards per carry. But I think that's more of a credit to Aaron Jones just being Aaron Jones. You know what I mean? His ability to find space. I haven't seen a running back that can just get small like he can at the line of scrimmage. And his ability to create opportunities. I think, A.J. Dillon's performance, because he doesn't have that ability to create like Aaron Jones does, I think is more of the true litmus test in terms of how the blocking was on the offensive line. And I know on some of those outside zone runs, a few of those toss plays, like you saw Bears defenders just flying through that offensive line to make plays in the line of scrimmage and in the backfield. So that's an area that they're going to have to improve. Obviously, if you don't have Aaron Jones, that gets a lot more difficult to take place. And they're going against an Atlanta defense that has a pretty stout defensive front, especially, one matchup to watch, Grady Jarrett in the middle against Josh Myers.
I don't want to think about it, Paul. I don't want to think about it.
Grady Jarrett against the run, against the pass. He's been one of the better interior guys in football. And I mean, even going back to the summer, watching Josh Myers go up against the TJ Slayton, and I'm not saying Slayton's in the Grady Jarrett bracket of players, but Slayton was able to give Myers quite a bit of fits this summer. So that's going to be a really, really important aspect of this game to watch, because as we all know, the Packers did a good job last week of being able to, overcome not having a ton of success on the ground. But I just wonder how truly sustainable that is. The first time starting quarterback, young group of pass catchers, consistently being behind the stick, second and long, third and longs, in predictable passing situations against something I'll get into here in a minute, a really, really aggressive defense. That's an uphill battle in terms of consistent success. So obviously something to keep our eyes on. As far as Quay Walker, left Sunday's game, as we all know, with the concussion, has been in concussion protocol. He was back at practice on Thursday in a limited capacity. If I had to guess, I would say that he's going to be out there on Sunday. Reason I say that is because, at least to my understanding of how concussion protocol works, like there isn't, it's not, there's no gray area, I guess is what I should say. It's either you're in it or you're out of it. It's not like, oh, you've progressed today, we can let you go back to practice, but you're still in it. You're either in it or you're not. So the fact that he was back on the practice field today, I think is going to be a good sign for his availability on Sunday. Christian Watson still hasn't practiced this week. As far as his availability, I'm not feeling very confident in that one. I think we can kind of look at Romeo Dobbs' timeline. He was out 11 or 12 days between the Seattle game or prior to it, and when he returned to practice last week, and he did practice last Thursday in a limited capacity, practiced on Friday in a limited capacity. So I don't feel as confident about Watson. And if he's not out there on Friday or tomorrow, then we absolutely know, pretty much for certain at that point that he's not going to be out there. But if I had to guess right now, the fact that he hasn't been on the field and just kind of the timeline that he's on, if it's mirroring Romeo Dobbs, I think his availability on Sunday is going to be in jeopardy.
That makes sense for sure. And you were mentioning the concussion protocol. I think a good parallel to that as we pop up the injury report here. Troy Anderson, linebacker for the Falcons, a good point here. He's in concussion protocol and he did not participate. So it kind of goes hand in hand with what you said. Once you're kind of in a limited fashion, it seems like, okay, you're out of concussion protocol. Everything's
that's my understanding. Yeah.
I think there's kind of like a final test too, maybe later in the week, where they just kind of confirm, okay, we're good. And it's wild how far the whole concussion thing has come. I mean, I remember back in the day, golly, I sound like an old man. Get your bell rung, hit the smelling salts, and get back out there, man. It's amazing how everything kind of came full circle, and I'm glad it did, to be honest. With everything that's subsided. So, good stuff. All right, let's go into the next question. Going into Atlanta this Sunday, what do you think on the offensive side of the ball? If we were to scout Atlanta out, what do you think would be their strength on offense? Obviously they got the young quarterback in Desmond Ridder. I feel like they've got a pretty decent backfield. It's amazing. You look up and you go, Drake London, okay. Got Kyle Pitts, okay, yeah. They got a good backfield. And really the only question mark, in my opinion, is the offensive line in Ridder. But I want to know, how does Paul Bretl see this offense in Atlanta?
Yeah, I mean, the strength and what the pack, it's going to be, Kenny Clark said before the Bears game, priority number one is stop the run. I haven't talked to Kenny Clark this week, but I'm going to guess priority number one again is stop the run. The Falcons are going to want to run the football. Ridder had 18 dropbacks in week one, which was the fewest among all eligible quarterbacks who are on the field for at least 20% of their team's offensive snaps. Algier averaged 5 yards per rush on 15 carries. Bijan Robinson had 5.6 yards on his 10 attempts. And Matt LaFleur and Jerry Montgomery, Jason Rebrovich, they've all talked about how difficult these running backs are to bring down. And the numbers showcase that. Algier, he had forced 5 missed tackles in last week's game alone, the second most among running backs. Both him and Robinson, I believe, were top 15 out of nearly 50 running backs in week 1 in terms of yards after contact average. So again, tackling is going to have to be a point of emphasis for this Packers team. And you mentioned Drake London, Kyle Pitts. That's kind of the balance that I feel like this Packers defense is going to have to strike. They want to run the ball. And even from a passing standpoint last week, you have those guys. Atlanta barely pushed the ball downfield. Of Ritter's 18 attempts, only 4 of them actually traveled more than 10 yards in the air. And of those 4, only 1 of them traveled more than 20 yards. So they want to run the ball. They rely heavily in the quick passing game as well. So it's short, maybe some intermediate routes, but when they're passing, the ball is getting out of Ritter's hands quickly. So again, that's going to affect the Packers pass rush just because there's less time to get there. And keep your eyes on Bijan Robinson in the passing game too. He was utilized quite a bit there as well. So step 1 for the Packers is going to be stopping the run game, because if you can, just what I mentioned before with how the Packers have to be better in the run to keep that offense out of predictable passing situations. If you can do that to Atlanta, and now you're forcing Ritter to not be as reliant on the quick passing game, because if you're trying to consistently pick up 7, 8, 9 yards on third down via the quick game, like odds are, unless there's, Packers are just really struggling, or, Arthur Smith and that Falcons team is, really getting their guys in space, like consistently moving the chains in that capacity is going to be difficult. And again, they have London, they have Pitts, but ultimately as a defense, you want to put the opponent into positions to do things that they don't want to do. And at least in week 1, throwing the ball, pushing the ball downfield was not something that was on the Falcons' radar. Again, not to say they can't do it. They have the dudes to do it, but stop the run, put them in the second and longs, third and longs. That's going to limit their ability in the quick passing game. And I think at that point, if Ritter beats you downfield on a play or two, you tip your hat, say nice pass, and you move on to the next play. Yeah.
I think I think you're spot on. It feels a lot like a similar game plan to what we had against the Bears, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, this sounds so silly, but I think I've convinced myself of this. Now, first of all, when I watched the tape back, I watched 2 passes through. I haven't watched the third pass through yet. I came away going, man, Ritter looked bad. That's just the way I felt about it. And then I go look at the stats. I'm like, he was actually efficient in completion percent. How did that happen? You know what I mean? Because he didn't look comfortable. Like you said, he wasn't pushing the ball down the field. But Paul, I kind of feel like Ritter's a better throwing quarterback than Justin Fields. And it sounds so silly, but it's like, I'm a little more nervous about Ritter beating us with his arm than Fields, although I think the game plan is going to be very, very similar. Stop the run, force Ritter to beat us, right? And then adjust at halftime if he does come out hot. Just amazing, man. I seen those 2 games back to back, and I immediately thought this feels like the same game plan from our defense's perspective, right? So pretty cool. I thought
the same exact thing.
Yeah. Okay. So on the defensive side of the ball, right? On Atlanta's defensive side of the ball, the Packers, I think they came out last week and they performed well against a bad Bears team, right? I'm trying to put that into perspective, but at the same time, when you play a bad defense, you should look good, right? What do you think is Atlanta's strength on defense? And I think I've already caught on to what you're going to say by the comment you made just a second ago, but they have a few pieces on defense that kind of makes you want to game plan around them a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think I'm going to go in a different direction. So we know the defensive front. I mentioned that earlier, but I think the Packers offensive line, they obviously have the ability to handle, that group. Obviously, they're going to have to play really well to do so, but they have the dudes up front. I think the biggest question for me is this young Packers pass catchers against the Atlanta secondary. Now, Matt LaFleur has talked about twice this week now that aggressiveness I mentioned earlier on defense. Like, that's just not how they play up front. Their cornerbacks are up in the receivers' faces. We saw Jesse Bates, the safety, come away with 3 turnovers on his own against Atlanta. And Dan Orlovsky of ESPN, he was talking about this week how that secondary and just the defense as a whole, but specifically the secondary, does a really good job of mixing and matching personnel as well as disguising coverages. And I know I've talked about this on here before, but going back to the joint practices against New England that the Packers had, Jordan Love talked about how after each of them, the Patriots did that stuff, the mixing and matching of personnel, the coverage disguises. He also mentioned that the Patriots blitzed a ton too. And on that second day of practice, that really gave Love and the Packers offense some fits. It's meant to cause some chaos, create some confusion. And especially when you have an aggressive secondary who can stay close to the cornerbacks or to the receivers, it's going to present some challenges for them. Now, on the flip side, what I'll say, and I wrote about this over at Packers Wire this week, the Packers' versatility is going to play such a key role in their ability to combat that. And I've talked about the versatility on this Packers team on here before, but we saw it like instantly against Chicago. 2 running back sets, 2 tight ends, 3 tight ends, 3 receivers, 4 receivers. Before halftime was done, we saw 2 running backs, 3 tight ends, and 5 receivers all taking snaps. So when you're in the moment and you're in that specific game, that's the core of Matt LaFleur's illusion of complexity. It's keeping defenses off balance, and you're able to run a variety of plays from just a few personnel packages, which helps create mismatches, gets guys in space, hopefully easier pitch and catch opportunities, yards after the catch as well. And Jordan Love said this on Wednesday when I was talking to him, that they also run, and you can see this, a ton of like plays. So plays that look the same formation wise, maybe even start out the same, but they end up completely different. And that's whether that's the run, whether that's the pass. And Ben Fennell, film guru on Twitter, if you're on there not following him, please do. He's excellent. But he tweeted out that there was no team in week 1 that put more on tape from a formation standpoint, from a run scheme standpoint, than what the Green Bay Packers did. And so as we look at how that factor impacts week 2 here with Atlanta, Jordan Love again said, by doing that, that's a ton on tape that the Falcons have to watch. That's a ton that they have to game plan for, and a ton that they potentially have to account for. So the benefit of that for a young offense is one of the question marks that we have is as we get into week 2, 3, 4, and so on, and the Packers are putting on film what they want to do, what they're good at, what they struggle with. Obviously, defenses week to week are going to make adjustments. And with a young quarterback, young offense, you have the question of, all right, how do they counter those defensive adjustments? But that gets a lot harder for the defense to do, again, when they're accounting for so many different things, so many variables. So yes, and Matt LaFleur doing that, he's taking advantage of the versatility he has. But, and again, not that I've asked him this, but I can bet that he was also planning ahead as well. And all right, let's throw as much at the Falcons and, the Saints and Lions, these early week opponents, and make them digest as much as they can and make them have to defend as much as they can. So I say all that to say that's going to be part of the Packers counter. And one other aspect to that counter is the Packers' ability to utilize motion. They were 5th in motion rate amongst NFL offenses in the first week. And specifically against teams who disguise their coverages, that's a great way to counter that. Because instead of the defense being the one making those last second adjustments, so Jordan Love's under center, he looks up, it's cover 2, he snaps the ball, he hits the back of his foot, and all of a sudden he's looking at cover 1. That's what, those coverage disguises can do. It's the offense who's doing the dictating, because now you're forcing the defense to do some late movement. That late movement can tip their hand a little bit in terms of what kind of coverage they're in. I mean, if there's any threat of the motion man getting the ball, there's that split second of hesitation. That's all it takes for a blocker to get into position. That's all it takes for a passing lane to open in the NFL. So that versatility, that utilizing that motion, that's how the Packers are going to be able to combat that Atlanta Falcons secondary. But in terms of what I'm watching, I think what one of their strengths is going to be that group for all the reasons mentioned, and just going against a young Packers offense, because that movement, all that personnel changes, it's meant to cause confusion, cause chaos for young players.
Yeah, definitely. I'll tell you, I was watching the tape and I was making the third pass through on Green Bay's tape. And it was the third time through that I watched the halfback screen throwback. Mm-hmm. And I paused it and was like, man, they really respected the heavy side of that formation. and we even showed a weak run look, boot back to the strong side. And I'm like, and I stopped and I'm like, that's a big who is that? And that's when I seen it was Rasheed Walker at tight end. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, they broke out U63. Look at this. So I'm telling you, I geeked out. I look like a little kid in here trying to zoom in and rewind back and forth. It absolutely fired me up. So it's so cool. And, if they're going to watch tape, LaFleur said, here, you're going to have to watch all the tape. Here, we're going to show you everything in the playbook right here.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Absolutely. We got a question here, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
This comes in from Mike Hebring. He says, Paul, I want to hear more about that crazy stunt calling man, Joe Barry. What was that? And can he keep it up? It's funny because coming into this offseason, Paul, everybody's focal point, everybody's concern was Joe Barry has them playing too far off. Joe Barry has them playing too far off. Everybody's forgot about that now. And now it's, what is this stunt game, right? And Kenny kind of tipped the hand last week, didn't he? He said, we got some stuff coming. You and I talked about it.
Yep.
Tim and Jacob here on the show talked about it. What did you think, man? Like Paul was, or like Mike was asking here, can he keep it up, man? Do you think you'll see more of that?
I do. I really do. And from a number standpoint, and it was Dari Carragher of Packer Report who did the crunching and digging on this, but he said that the Packers ran 28 stunts against the Chicago Bears. And I think the Bears had 70 or so offensive plays. So it's roughly like 37% of the Packer snaps. They were doing stunts. And for comparison, they averaged 7 per game last year. So just a huge shift in terms of that post-snap movement. And I do think it's here to stay because this wasn't a phenomenon, so to speak. Did I expect them to run stunts 37% of their snaps? No. Did I think they're going to? Yes, because they did it throughout training camp. They did it in the preseason games. We saw it quite a bit as well. So the fact that they didn't wasn't as surprising, but obviously the frequency at which they did was. So I think it's here to stay for that reason. I also think that there is definitely been a shift in terms of the more aggressive approach. And again, when I say aggressive, that doesn't mean we're going to see him, in man coverage right up on the receivers every play. We're not going to see the linebackers blitzing constantly, but I think it's more of seeing these stunts. I think we're going to see some more blitzes. And we did on Sunday, not that they really had to in that game, but we saw a couple of linebackers blitz. Rudy Ford, Jair Alexander were sent on blitzes. And that goes back to the offseason. Joe Barry or Rasul Douglas said that after the season last year, Joe Barry brought everyone in, basically had an open forum kind of Q&A of, all right, what do we got to do to improve? And of course, being more aggressive was one of the topics. And about halfway through training camp, Rasul was asked, has Barry done that? Have you guys in practice seen that more aggressive approach? And he said that he has. And I think I mentioned on here, we've seen those signs as well throughout training camp with cornerbacks challenging a little bit more, with more blitzing from the linebackers, with these stunts. So I do think it's here to stay. I'm not going to say it's going to be at that same frequency each week, but I do think that that's going to be a part of the Packers defensive front and overall game plan. And they have they're better equipped now with their personnel to be able to do that. I mean, you add in Colby Wood and Carl Brooks, their versatility, Devontae Wyatt, we know is versatile. All of them have a ton of speed. Like those are the type of guys you want running those plays, shooting gaps, just because of the potential that's there to really wreak some havoc on the offensive line.
Yeah, definitely. That's another thing that popped on film to me was when we were in our base, when they ran a 12 personnel and we triggered our base, we went with that 34 jam and we ran a 99 contain, and it was like that was the call all day long. And then when we were in the nickel 2-4-5, they ran the double ET stunt and used that as a contain on the outside. And you could tell Justin Fields was uncomfortable the whole day. Mm-hmm. It's like he wanted to bounce outside. And the one time that he tried to test it, unfortunately for him, there was Lucas Van Ness, right? How fun was that, Paul?
That's such an impressive play. I mean, we've seen what Justin Fields can do with the ball in his hands, and it wasn't like, we all know the speed, athleticism that Van Ness has, but it was really on display because he was juked a little bit inside before then making that beeline out to field. So I mean, that's what when you draft an edge rusher, at that pick, and you're just, know that they have that athleticism. That's the stuff that they can do instantly, the type of plays they can make.
Definitely. And it was so cool seeing Fields it's obvious he would have thrown it away if he thought he couldn't get away. And you could even see him do his little patent arm swipe, like he was just going to say, "Get off me."
Mm-hmm.
Next thing you know, he's picking himself up, looking at the replay, like, what just happened? Like, who was that? Absolutely awesome. Let's see. We got one more question here. We'll get to my final question, and we'll get you out of here. We'll go rapid fire, I promise. Emilio said, what's Paul's take on Dylan running out of the pistol? I would rather have him coming downhill than sidecar. The statistics last year shown that we average more yards per carry running out of the shotgun, but Dylan just looks a little off. Are we wrong with thinking that? Is that what you've seen too, Paul? Like, what do you think Dylan's struggles are right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. His emphasis, Matt LaFleur's talked about this. I asked him about it. It's about been running with a lower pad level, being more physical, more, having, in his words, his mindset this year was about being dominant because he has that size, he has that strength. But, I think one of the issues from last season was that because he didn't run with that low pad level, that he wasn't, breaking as many tackles as we saw the year before, or pushing that pile forward that extra yard or two. And I think part of it too is, because he is that downhill runner, he doesn't have the ability like Aaron Jones does to create opportunities. And if we look at the offensive line play last year, for the first half of the season, it was very, very up and down. There was injuries. There was a ton of movement. Like, that was not the Packers offensive line play that we've been accustomed to. But as Bakhtiari returned, they got healthy. There was more continuity. If you look at Dylan's yards per rush per game, they got back to a more normal level during those last 5, 6, 7 games of the season. And as I mentioned just a few minutes ago when talking about the run game, the offensive line didn't do the best job on Sunday in creating those running lanes. So I think that's really what the product is. He is very, very much dependent upon how's the offensive line performing. Are they giving him running lanes? Just because, again, he doesn't have that playmaking ability, so to speak, like Aaron Jones does.
Yeah, definitely. Completely agree. And just a little update here. Philadelphia has beaten Minnesota 3-0. So obviously we're all Eagles fans tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. Final question, Paul. Josh Nyman's contract was recently restructured. Now, Spotrac hasn't updated yet, but what we heard through, I think it was Phil Yates that reported it. He said that they restructured and they added voided years, reducing his cap hit this year. What do you think the purpose of that restructure is, and does it maybe play a role in a potential extension for Gary? When I look at it, I go, okay, it's got to be one of two things. It's either freeing up a little bit of money to be very specific with Rashawn Gary's contract extension, if indeed it is coming here mid-season, or maybe they've got their eyes on someone, maybe a potential trade. I mean, the one commonality, I would imagine it's going to free a little bit of money up this year. But does anything come to mind for you on that contract restructure, Paul?
Yeah, so I believe it freed up about $2.5 million in cap space this year. And my guess right now is that that's just to give them more wiggle room throughout the season.
Okay.
Before that move took place, they had about $5 million in cap space. Now, I think teams like to be in that $7 to $8 million range because there's going to be, additional expenses coming down the pipeline. Players are going to hit, in-game bonuses that they have built into their contract, practice squad elevations. Every week, if they're bringing up 2 or 3 guys, that's an additional cap hit throughout the course of the season that they have to take on. Teams always want additional cap space as well in case there's an addition that pops up. And when I say addition, I don't mean a big one either,
right.
Although I'm not sure who's available at this point. I mean like your Tavon Austin, that they've brought in past years, or your Tyler Irvin, those type of street free agents. It just gives you a little bit of flexibility and wiggle room to make those moves and, again, account for those expenses that are going to happen, the practice squad elevations, the bonuses and things like that. So honestly, that's what I think it was for, just to give them a little more flexibility. As far as Rashawn Gary goes, his extension on its own will free up from the projections that I've seen, $3 to $4 million in cap space. So they didn't have to do anything with Nyman's deal in order to do anything with Gary. Gary's playing on a 5th-year option, which is basically a 1-year deal. And his cap hit at that 1-year deal is almost $11 million. So even though you're infusing a ton of more new money into the contract, you're also adding on at least probably 4 more years to spread those cap charges out to. So on the back end, an extension would actually free up cap space for the Green Bay Packers this year. And as far as when that'll happen, I tweeted this out recently. Kenny Clark's extension was mid-August. Elton Jenkins was in November, I believe, and Bakhtiari was in December, or flip those two around, but you get the idea. So the fact that it hasn't happened yet, I wouldn't read too much into it. As I just mentioned, they can happen at any point throughout this, throughout the regular season, but it's going to happen at some point. What a dominant performance. And I think everyone saw the PFF numbers about Gary's 5 pressures and only 10 pass rush snaps. Well, by the Packers counting, Matt LaFleur said he actually had 7 pressures. So just a little old 70% success rate on pressures. Not bad.
That's what we were talking about yesterday. It was like they said, okay, we had 12 total snaps. He had 7 pressures. Then we broke it down. It was like, well, it's actually only 10 pressure attempts. So holy cow, 70% pressure rate. I'm so glad to have that guy on the Packers roster, Paul.
He's so good. And Matt LaFleur has said it best. He's a tone setter. Like, obviously there's the production that you get from him, but when you have a guy like Rashawn Gary on the field, and man, talk to Joe Barry about him for 5 seconds and you'll hear the word work ethic about 20 times. When you have that guy on the field who brings that intensity, that work ethic, that just elevates everyone around him.
No, it definitely does. Definitely does. Paul, you elevate this podcast every time you come on here, man. We really appreciate your time. Everybody go check him out. You can follow him on X at Paul_Bretl. He writes for the Packers Wire, the Dairyland Express. Make sure you check out his YouTube channel. It is phenomenal. Paul, you're the best, buddy. We appreciate you.
Hey, thanks, Clayton. Always a good time. Take care.
Yeah, you too, pal. Enjoy the game.
You too.
All right. We bring in Tim from Green Bay now. Tim, as always, Paul came in and added a little bit of intelligence to this joke of a program that we have here. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great, and I'm taking notes as usual.
Same, man.
Soaking it up.
What stood out to you there, man? Anything kind of just jump out right off the bat?
Well, of course, Quay Walker on the injury report. And Paul's insight is always appreciated. So with the concussion protocol, that's something that he's in, and will be in until he's not in it anymore. My understanding is the practicing today is actually a part of it, that they want to see how he practices. And then I believe the only other step left is the independent neurologist kind of signing off and letting him go. That could be tomorrow. That could be Saturday. I don't know. But that's definitely refreshing. That stood out for sure, breaking down the injury report. But just wrapping it up there, I like the insight from Paul on the Rashawn extension, basically breaking it down where I believe he said we could still free up $3 to $5 million in cap with an extension. So really, Josh Nijman's restructure wasn't necessarily tied directly to a Rashawn extension, which kind of provides us a little more insight. I like what he said about that, freeing up cap room during the season. It totally makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And immediately what it triggered in my mind, I didn't want to keep him too long. When they signed Elton Jenkins's contract extension, they actually absorbed a pretty good chunk that first year. So they took the opposite approach from what Paul's talking about there with Rashawn, where when you do an extension, you typically free up money this year. But in this case, if they already had that money there, right, and you freed it up, it kind of makes you wonder, like, okay, well, if they do take that approach and they free up another $3 to $5 million, now you're pretty far over that threshold that we talk about, for having that $7 million buffer that he was talking about. So it's fascinating to me, man. And I'm a numbers guy. I'm a business owner. I love kind of looking at every angle of how you can squeeze every little bit out of every penny, right? And I don't know. I just love the salary cap talk. It's just awesome. I would love to be a fly on Goody's wall right now, or more specifically, Russ Ball's wall right now, going, okay, what is the game plan here? Because it's another thing, too. If you do extend Gary, and basically what Paul said is it could happen mid-August, which we've already passed. It could happen all the way as late as December, right? So it could be any time during the season. But what if the Packers do surprise some people and go on a little bit of a run, right? And then you you re-sign Rashawn Gary and free up even more room. And then if you've got a late season push, maybe you bring in someone there to add a little depth, or who knows, maybe you get somebody at the trade deadline. If you're going into week 8 and, the Packers are looking good and okay, we're definitely in playoff contention, and you've got a hole at safety and maybe you go out and trade for someone that might be on the trade block at the safety position, right? I mean, there's just a lot of different ways this thing can go, and it's all going to come down to how the Packers play, throughout this first quarter of the season, in my opinion. Let's look at the injury report real quick. You kind of brung it up. Paul talked about it. Let me get this banner off real quick. So like you were talking about with concussion protocol, and I mentioned with Paul, Troy Anderson, linebacker for the Falcons, is still in concussion protocol, and he did not participate Thursday, which tells me the initial test they did, he probably failed, right? Well, with Quay Walker going out to limited, we're just waiting on the sign-off now. Now, that's just like you said. But from the injury standpoint on the Packers side, obviously Bakhtiari didn't practice, but that's just veterans rest. Romeo Dobbs limited, Rashawn Gary limited, Elton Jenkins limited, Anthony Johnson Jr. full participation. Aaron Jones did not participate. Quay Walker with that limited participation. Christian Watson did not participate. And then Daniel Whelan is on the injury report, but full participation. Evidently, he stubbed a finger or something there. It looks
like. My goodness.
But I think we're good there. I think that, with him being full participation, we're good to go.
Most people will go, why are you worried about your punter's finger? It's like, well, because he's holding for our kicker.
Exactly. So when it comes down to those three, and based off what Paul said, the way I kind of feel about the chances of these guys playing, I think Quay Walker's looking better and better every day. He's going to play. I think Aaron Jones is kind of iffy, probably a 50-50 shot. And I'm feeling like Christian Watson probably won't play. He'll probably be doubtful this week. Do you agree, disagree with anything there from the injury standpoint, Tim?
I agree with when it comes to Watson. Paul touched on that too, that he doesn't. There's not going to be a reason to rush right now if he's dealing with. And he kind of like did the parallel with Dobbs, like when Dobbs had his hamstring issues, like kind of the timeline he was on. But it's like that's the best guesstimate any of us can really come up with, because Scoot is his own man, and he's gonna heal how he heals and rehab how he rehabs. So I think time will tell, but that's something that should be a cause for concern looking forward. Like you just talked about with the cap room during the year, like here's an injury at a key position, a player that gives us high production when he's on the field, valuable. I mean, if we don't have him moving forward, it sure is going to be nice to have extra flexibility with the cap to maybe bring somebody else in. If we have to, in fact, do that. So,
right.
Yeah, man, I'm concerned, man. I don't think he's going to go on Sunday.
Yeah. And Rob Domofsky actually tweeted out earlier today. He said Packers coach Matt LaFleur on running back Aaron Jones, and of course, talking about the hamstring, who didn't practice but did some rehab work in a helmet. Coach LaFleur said, quote, anytime he's out there and has a helmet on, that's a good sign. So, that could be Matt LaFleur sending a little bit of fake, a little fake fodder for the Falcons to think about, or who knows, man, Aaron Jones may be ready to go Sunday.
Can we talk about Matt LaFleur for a minute? Because
let's hear it.
I love the new Matt LaFleur, man.
Oh yeah, dude. Like
Prison Matt, full effect. He is he's playing very close to the chest, very tight-lipped. I believe it was I was listening to I think Ryan, and I was catching up on Ryan and JJ, their pod the other night. He was kind of talking about similar how like LaFleur is like not letting anyone get any film in these first couple of games by just the way he's calling these plays. And it's like, yeah, that's his approach with the media after the game and before the game, and how he's releasing certain statements. And I love it. I think with Aaron Jones, I think what Matt LaFleur said the other day is going to be the exact truth. We're going to give him as long as he needs, and if he feels like he can go on Sunday, then he'll go on Sunday. So I'm assuming that do they have like an hour before kickoff before they have to tell us who the hell's playing? So
right.
I mean, we might we might hear Aaron Jones as a go 60 minutes before kickoff. So get up early, have your coffee on Sunday, be ready.
Definitely. I'll tell you what else is worth getting up early over, getting the day started so you can get in a good work day. And then when you hit that lunch break, go over to Old Southern Barbecue Smokehouse. They got 5 locations in Rice Lake, Hudson, Arden Hills, Minneapolis, and Shakopee. Go check out any of those locations, drop in, have lunch. Also, if you're planning a party, you're planning on having some friends over to watch the Packers play, they do catering as well. You can check out their catering menu on their website, oldsouthernbarbecue.com. They got brisket, they got ribs, they got all kinds of sides. Just take the work off yourself, have them come in and cater the event for you. You can kick back, enjoy the game, and relax. And definitely want to check them out at those 5 locations. Also, if you're at a distance like me and you love to barbecue, you love cooking out, you love grilling, you love firing up the smoker, check out oldsouthernbbq.com for their sauces and rubs. They've also got an awesome kind of a bundle put together that several of our listeners have already purchased, and I know they're excited about trying. I think it comes with 2 rubs and these 4 sauces. They got the Southern Gals Sweet Brown Sugar. We got Dixie Red, Rich and Smoky. You got Chicago Blue, Mild and Tangy, and Chicago Fire, which is obviously it brings the heat. That's my favorite. And it sounds like they're already getting a pretty strong influx in business there on the website from all of our listeners checking them out. So make sure you guys get them before they sell out. And again, you can go to their website. That's oldsouthernbarbecue.com. Get everything you need as far as grilling. They'll take care of you. And like I said, if you're local, make sure you drop into one of those 5 locations. But we definitely appreciate Old Southern Barbecue Smokehouse for sponsoring the show. Let's do this. Let's move on to, I want to show you this screenshot real quick. I thought this was cool. Kind of back to the injury report, and then we'll move on to some of the betting lines and some of the metrics that are kind of popping up for this preview with the Falcons. But this was also Rob Domofsky on Twitter, said Quay Walker concussion is still in the protocol, but he's progressed to the point where he's going through some drills. And then he talked about Aaron Jones's hamstring, had a helmet but stayed inside of rehab. Christian Watson, hamstring, also rehabbing. No Bakhtiari per practice usual, but you can see Quay right there on that shot that Rob tweeted out. And I swear, Quay's going to go, man. Quay's ready to roll. I'm excited to see him out there Sunday. I know you'd be excited about that. Let's move on to kind of the betting line. And I like to keep my eyes on the Emilio. Look at Emilio doing my job for me. He also said, hey, guys, when you order online for Old Southern Barbecue, make sure you type in the promo code PackerNet15, get you 15% off. Look at Emilio. I got to put him on the payroll, man. Got to put him on the payroll. Mano said, Clayton, can you add the sponsor website to the video description? Maybe add it to your template. Yeah, we'll see if we can do that, but we'll get that put in there. But again, that is oldsouthernbbq.com. I'll see if I can put that in the description of the video there for sure. Things get a little haywire when we're going live, but it is what it is. All right. I like to keep my eyes on the betting market simply because it kind of tells you the direction the game's going in from a sense of popularity with people that are putting money on the game, Tim, and then also kind of gives you an idea of how Vegas really feels about where the money's at. So when you're talking about the spread, as we had mentioned before, the line actually opened up and the Packers were 1.5 point favorites when the line first opened. Okay. It peaked at 2 points. So the Packers were 2 point favorites. Now it's completely flipped to where the Packers are 1.5 point underdogs. Okay. So the thing that you really want to key in on here is people hear that and they go, oh, it's the injury news. It's this, it's that. No, Vegas's goal is to keep this as 50% possible where the money is, right? And when you look at the cash that has come in already, you know, the cash that's come in is 71% of the cash is in on the Falcons. Okay. And you got about a 50% rate on the tickets. So the money got so far in the Falcons' favor. In my opinion, this is the way I view it, right? It got so far in their favor because at one point you were catching +2 on the handicap there if you bet the Falcons. Well, now it's completely flipped to where the Packers are now catching 1.5 points, right? So I'm just telling you right now, I don't give any betting advice on here, Tim, and I don't even know if you gamble, but I will say I would feel pretty darn good about the Packers having 1.5 points, plus 1.5 points on that. And again, gamble responsibly, okay? And if you don't believe in gambling, totally cool, completely understand. But when I seen that plus 1.5 for the Packers after it started -2, I went, whoo, boy, that looks a little, I don't know, a little enticing there. Now, when you look at the team metrics, Tim, this is probably more down your alley. Team metrics, according to PFF, overall power ranking, the Packers are ninth in the league. The Falcons are 23rd. Power ranking on defense, the Packers are 14th. The Falcons are 24th. Power ranking on offense, the Packers are 29th, and the Falcons are 23rd. Your SOS played, meaning your strength of schedule played already, the Packers 28th, Falcons 30th. Your average offensive snaps, 62 for the Packers, only 53 for the Falcons so far in these first one game each there. Percentage of run plays, 50% for the Packers, 52.9% for the Falcons. Obviously, that makes the pass rate for the Falcons 47.1%. Your EPA, which is expected points added, okay, that's what that represents. A negative 0.27 on EPA per run for the Packers, and you can see the Falcons have a little bit stronger run game as it sits through one game at a negative 0.02, but the EPA per pass 0.39 for the Packers, negative 0.20 for the Falcons. This seems like it's going to be a game, Tim, where the Packers are going to need to win through the air, and the Falcons are going to try to grind this thing out and win on the ground, man. How do you feel about the way those numbers stack up?
Man, this game's got 13-10 written all over it.
It really does.
Or I don't know. It's going to be a grinder either way, but I would agree with that sentiment that we got to try and do it through the air, and they're going to try and do it on the ground. So, which is really interesting because, Paul was just on here talking about, the secondary in Atlanta, and then you look at our front against, their run game. So it's going to be, to me, and again, I'm not an expert, but it's going to be a close game, guys. Like I don't think anyone's going to run away with this game on Sunday. It's going to be a tight nail biter.
Yeah, definitely. I was looking at the over under here too. I think the over under currently is at 40.5, and PFF has it at 41.7. So yeah, I'm with you, man. I don't know if they'll reach 40.5, but again, don't take advice from me on that. Just interesting to see how the numbers kind of lay out there for sure. Let's look at the quarterback comparison. This is exciting. So obviously, Jordan Love, quarterback for the Packers. Let's start with Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder, quarterback for the Falcons. PFF grade in week 1, 52.1. Passer rating with a clean pocket was 114.5. His passer rating under pressure, listen to this, Tim. Passer rating under pressure, 39.6, right? And that offensive line played like booty on Sunday. I mean, it was bad. Big time throw percentage. There was no big time throws according to PFF for either side. If there was 0% was the success rate. Turnover worthy plays. Desmond Ridder 4.17%, and then power rating a 0.5. His power rating rank is 29th. Now, when you look at Jordan Love, not a whole lot better according to PFF. 62.5 though, basically 10 points higher than Desmond Ridder. Your passer rating when clean, 126.4. Passer rating under pressure, 81.3, almost tripled. No, I'm sorry, basically a little over doubled Desmond Ridder's score there. Big time throw percentage, 0%, same as Ridder. Turnover worthy play percentage, 3.3%, significantly lower. And then a power rating of 1.0. He's 25th in power rating rank. I think it's safe to say we got the quarterback matchup there, don't you think, Tim?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Yeah. It's funny too because we see the passer rating when you have a clean pocket. It's like, well, Jay Money's, that's all he's had is clean pockets. So it's it'll be a good test of this offensive line. That's all I'm going to say. This will be way more of a test than I think the Bears gave them last week. So hopefully we continue to see clean pockets and no mistakes at center. But I don't know. I don't want to get on that conversation anymore. We're gonna leave Josh alone.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's exactly what we're gonna do. Yeah. Eric Sutherland in the chat says, I gambled 7 times and got 7 kids. I no longer gamble on anything.
Oh boy.
Oh man. And that is the president of the PTA posse. That is your fearless leader gang right there. And just a little update, the end of the first quarter, the Eagles are still leading the Vikings 3-0 there. Let's see here. Yeah, I like
I'll
what
give you a little
Knucklehead.
insight, Clayton, real quick.
Yeah.
I am a gambler.
Oh,
I do not bet on sports, however.
got it.
So,
Okay. All right.
but I do like the angle. I think you're right. There's validity to looking at the lines and seeing how the betting markets are reacting. It does, especially when you put it up against PFF and other metrics, because it gives us more insight into the game. So I'm always, I'm not into the sports betting, but I'm definitely, I like the info. So
Got it.
I'm with
Yeah.
you there, brother.
I think it's important. It's something that Michael Lombardi, he doesn't gamble, but he gives a ton of gambling advice and works for Visa. And he, like he said, we're in an information business. That's what he
Exactly.
always says. And the more info, the better. Now you can get paralysis by analysis. And sometimes games come down to the most simplest forms, right? In my opinion, the three biggest factors are, head coach versus head coach, coordinators versus coordinators, right? And you got quarterbacks versus quarterbacks. Those are the big things. And people say, oh, well, quarterbacks don't play each other. No, but that's the most important production you can have in a football game is how well the quarterback protects the football, controls explosive plays, and gets your team into the end zone, plain and simple. And then, of course, if you were to take it peel it back a level deeper, I'm looking at the matchup on the edges of the defense and how they can get pressure and affect those said quarterbacks for sure. Knucklehead Paul in the chat says it's going to be a tough game. No stupid penalties. Amen, Paul. It's going to come down to who protects the football and who doesn't make, as many mistakes as the other team. It's really what it's going to come down to. I think it's got potential to be a really good game. And I think it's going to be one of those that, just like every week, Tim, we look up and we go, didn't see that coming. It just seems like it happens every Sunday in the NFL. No doubt. Let's see here. Yeah, Emilio, I see that too, man. He says no one can hold on to the ball in this Vikings game. It's been bad, man. It's been real bad. Butterfingers all around, says Eric Sutherland. I want to point this out before we wrap up, Tim. I thought this was really cool. We actually got a couple of more things. Well, let's hit on this, and then we'll wrap back around to Jordan Love. This came out from Ryan Wood. He said, Packers defensive coordinator Joe Barry on The View from Press Box, where he's calling games this season. Quote, it feels like my spot. I told you guys I really enjoyed it in there in the preseason. After those 3 preseason games, I didn't really flinch. Seems pretty comfortable up there, Tim. And I don't know about you, man, but that gets me excited because, sometimes you got to shake things up. And again, it's funny how everybody was saying the coverage was screwed up last year. We're playing too far off. Nobody's saying that right now. But now it's, we changed with the stunts. And it's like, don't move the goalposts, people. Joe Barry ended the year with one of the best defenses in the league in that last 4-game span, really the last 5-game span. And when I say one of the best defenses, he was right there on the borderline of a top 10 defense. It carries over into this year, and everybody's looking for that reason why all of a sudden, okay, Joe Barry's still trash, but he's just doing this different. He finally changed, right? But what do you think about him up in the box, man?
I love it. And, the fans give him a hard time. And it's like you would think that these people act like the players don't want to play for him or something. And that's not the case at all. These guys do want to play for him. And I've said this before, man, he has great rapport with his defense, with his players. And I will tell you this, I'm looking forward to the moment this year. I'm not sure which week it's going to come, but I know in my heart that we're going to see it, that there's going to be one of these games where we're up like 3 or 4 or 5 scores late in the game, and Joe's going to be the first guy down from the booth on that sideline, high-fiving his defense during garbage time. And it'll be a nice little cherry on top after him going up to the booth this year, because clearly, this is the spot. Old Southern Barbecue, let's get it shipped up there. We'll give him some extra sauce. We'll get him some extra napkins, whatever he needs. Make sure we get him some cornbread muffins too, because those are easy to eat while you're up there doing your thing. But that's where he belongs, man. And he's seeing it better. And and like Paul said earlier, we're better equipped to run this scheme now. We have better pieces at Joe Barry's disposal. So, like I said, people, let's really just give them. I know we said this before, but give them a chance. Give them a chance this year to see how this plays out.
Yeah, and this league, man, it's so cyclical. It's so up and down. And it's all about adjustments. His first year as defensive coordinator had a great year. No one was complaining. like, wow, this is a huge step in the right direction for Mike Pettin. And then comes out in the first quarter of the season last year and basically was just ripping. I mean, like I said, I've talked about it over and over. Tony Romo on the CBS broadcast said, this might be the best defense in the league. They go through that rough patch, right? Everybody's screaming, fire Joe Barry. And then you finish the season with one of the better defenses in the league, right? And it seems like it's carrying over now. And I think a huge aspect of it is Jaron Reed not being in that lineup, Dean Lowry not being in that lineup, and actually getting people like, you've seen it, Devontae Wyatt, basically his first start as a legitimate number one defensive lineman in this nickel and 34 base. And he just played lights out, 1.5 sacks, and just absolutely tormented Justin Fields all day long. Emilio in the chat says, and he gets to watch the whole game from the all-22 view. How can that not help a scheme? Absolutely, man. Absolutely. He said, Emilio also said, I bet he was the first one hopping the players up at halftime. They love him, dude. That's what cracks me up.
They do.
Not one person have you heard. If anything, if you want to read between the lines, to me, it seems like maybe Jerry Gray was the guy that the players were kind of like, ugh, because you've seen he immediately left as soon as the season was over, right? He goes to did he go to Atlanta? Am I thinking right?
Texans, I thought.
Was it? I can't remember. If it's maybe Atlanta, boy, that's a heck of a story, isn't it? Well, I'm sure somebody in the chat knows. If you do, fire it off in there, guys. Let's figure out where Jerry Gray went as far as, because if he's in Atlanta now, then this is it's a little bit personal, I believe, which is pretty cool.
Good sidebar story too is this Devondre Campbell's first trip back to Atlanta as a Packer now?
I'm pretty sure it was. And it's funny, I heard Ryan Schlip on a podcast last night with several Atlanta Falcons fans, and one of them specifically asked him, was like, hey, what's up with Devondre Campbell? How do you feel about Devondre Campbell? And, Ryan was like, I think he's a good ball player. He's played really well for us. Obviously we gave him an extension, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, I'm glad he's doing it up there because he didn't do it down here. And it's just another example of scheme matters. And, one of the side stories there was Devondre Campbell signed in Green Bay because when he was in Atlanta, Coach LaFleur was there, and it came out of Devondre's mouth that he said he wanted to play for Matt LaFleur. He loved Matt LaFleur. Even though Matt LaFleur is an offensive coach, he just loved his style. He loved his approach. And that was one of the reasons why Devondre Campbell wanted to come to Green Bay is because of Matt LaFleur. He wanted to play for him, which I thought was really, really cool. Let's wrap it up with this, Tim. We'll check the chat before we wrap up. If you guys got any questions or comments, fire away. But I thought this was really cool. Remember last week we were talking, and or actually it was yesterday. I said, boy, when you talk about Aaron Jones's miles per hour, right? Last week, Madden needs to increase that speed, right? Well, they did. They gave him a +1 on speed this week. But this one's really cool. Check this out, Tim, as I put this up here. Jordan Love on Madden just got a +3 overall increase. So he went from a 72 to a 75 overall. So he's already – and understand that's not just a minimal jump either. Like to catch 3 points, I don't know if you're a big Madden guy or not, but that's pretty significant, Tim.
I'm a little rusty. I haven't played Madden in a couple of years. So if anyone wants a good laugh, well, I'll jump on at some point and, be a noob again. But hey, you know what? You want a real here's a little arrogant statement to go along with this. He'll be an 85 by the bye week.
Ooh,
how about that?
Put it on the ticker. Put it on the ticker.
That? He's at a 75 overall now. He better be north of 80 in a few weeks, I'll tell you.
Absolutely. All right. Emilio confirmed that Jerry Gray is in Atlanta. Cool
ATL,
little time.
Okay.
Let's go.
Speaking of Jerry's, can we give a quick shout out since we're talking about our coaching staff? Because we keep talking about the defensive front and we can't talk about them without the other Jerry Montgomery. Another coach who I think is unfairly taken a lot of heat and criticism from some of the fans over the last few years. What I saw out there this camp was exactly what I think we would want to see. So I want to give him his props too, working on getting these guys ready to do what they need to do in that front. Yeah, definitely, man. And you can see it's paying off. And Kenny Clark, man, just an absolute leader. He just, I don't know, man, that first game. And great, I keep telling myself, Tim, it's the Bears, Clayton. It's the Bears. Calm down. But they looked so excited to play for each other. And then the depth coming in too. And I've watched that Lucas Van Ness sack
1,000 times. And every time I love, my favorite part isn't how it isn't how he set the edge. It isn't how he played. He played under control and discipline by not biting on the play fake. It isn't the fact that he aimed for the outside shoulder of Justin Fields rather than letting him cut the corner. My favorite part of that play was when Justin Fields stood up and looked up at the scoreboard, like the replay, like the look on his face screamed, "How the hell did that happen?" I love it, man. Absolutely love it. Emilio in the chat says he thinks Jordan Love will be an 84 by the end of the year on Madden. And then Grooney in the chat, Grunny, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, might have the coolest profile picture on YouTube, man. It looks like something I couldn't pull off there. If I fall off that on that bike, y'all are carrying me out of the woods. I promise you that. He said an 85 by the end of the season. I like it, man. I like it. People are on board with Jordan Love, Tim, and I tell you what, man, he's won that locker room over. And again, I'm going to play it again real quick here. I started to play it yesterday. It's going to be loud, Tim, so watch yourself. Hopefully it doesn't bust your eardrums. But I absolutely love this Rashawn Gary. At the end of the game, Jordan Love being interviewed by Aaron Andrews, and Rashawn Gary comes over and just completely breaks it up and says, no, this is what he says.
Stop playing with him! Stop playing with him! Stop playing with him!
Love Aaron Andrews, absolutely terrified. Tim, this team wants to play for Jordan, man. They want to play for him.
Man, speaking of which, too, I like Eric Stokes in at the end too.
Yeah.
That's a guy that, he's got his on the field struggles. Like we talked about, he wasn't playing super great football before the injury, but he's a guy that wants to get back, and he is a big part of that secondary room and that defense. And these are some of the intangibles that people don't talk about often. You need things like this to be a successful football team. You have to have guys that are willing to go out there and play for each other. It's not just playing for the coaches, not just playing for us fans, but playing for each other out there. And clearly this team, top to bottom, is fitting the bill. So it's good to see that chemistry. And, Rashawn speaking up for Jay Money, because Jay Money is not he's not a flashy dude. He's very humble and respectable guy. So I don't think we're going to see too much trash talk from Jordan Love. So it's going to have to come from some of the other guys on the team for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Emilio in the chat says all you need is unity. I'm a history nerd, and it's really the reason that this country was founded, and the British officers during the Revolutionary War, they were quoted many different ways, many different times, saying basically that very thing, Emilio, saying that I think at one point they said, one man with this kind of attitude, this kind of love for the cause, right? That unity that you talk about is worth 100 without it, right? And it's just so cool, man. So cool. Absolutely love it. So, all right, let's wrap this thing up. Tim, parting thoughts. You got anything else, bud?
Just excited to see the final injury report. I'm gonna be honest, the final injury report, or at least the final practice. I believe they practice tomorrow and then nothing Saturday, I'm assuming, before the game. So I will be checking Paul Bretl's timeline like a hawk, as I'm sure many of us will be. So just looking forward to the updates on some of our guys. Even the ones that we're pretty sure aren't going to play, like Christian Watson, I'd still like to hear that he's making some progress. So just keeping our guys in my prayers here, especially being banged up early in the season. Clearly we have more names on that injury report than the Falcons. So
Right.
Going into this weekend, we want to be as close to full strength. So just keeping positive, man. That's about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said. Eric Sutherland in the chat said, this team has me more excited than I've been in a while. Grunny said, I did pronounce it right. I can't remember if it was Grooney or Grunny I said first, so I just got it wrong once there. But glad to hear. Janelle says, great show. We appreciate you dropping through, Janelle. Thank you so much. And Emilio said, I'm ready to run through a wall for this team. It's a different feel, Emilio. This year feels just a little bit different. And I want to say this. I want to give a shout out to the newest YouTube members of the PTA Posse. We've got Ashton Alexander and we got Godsmack AR69. appreciate you guys and your support. You will be entered into the next drawing to win a piece of memorabilia. And I still haven't heard from iHeezy340. So as of right now, I need to set a deadline. I'm going to say by midnight of Saturday. So Sunday morning by midnight, 12:01 Sunday morning, I should say. If I don't hear from iHeezy340, we're just going to spin it again during the post-game show and give that thing away. I think that's the only right thing to do there. So, again, thank you so much for the new YouTube members. We really appreciate it. Also, everybody in the chat, you guys showed up in full force tonight with a football game on, which is absolutely awesome. So, again, now it looks like the Vikings are up 7-3. So, Tim, we got to hop off here and root against this purple team, bro. I appreciate your time, man. It's so good to talk to you. Appreciate you jumping on here with me. And we're going to get out of here. Again, thanks everybody in the chat. For those of you making us a part of your day, or for those of you on the pod, thank you for making us a part of your day. As always, let's go out and be the change we want to see in the world, and go Pack Go.
The power sweep. Actually, it's the lead play in our offense.
Come to tackle, take the defensive end if he's over him. If he's not, you drive down the first man to his inside. Pull back and tell him to take the first man outside the offensive tackle. No one shows. Go right by them and field inside. If the YN has the linebacker taken out, he cuts inside. If the YN has the linebacker in, he comes all the way around. If you look at this play, what we're trying to get is a seal here and a seal here, and try to run this play in the alley.